Recently, I asked for your guys' hot takes in Mortal Kombat. All Mortal Kombat games, whether it's Mortal Kombat 1, you name it. And when I asked for your guys' feedback, I said there is no wrong answer. I truly want to know what you like the most or what you dislike the most in Mortal Kombat. My friends, it's time to get bloody. Let's take a look at some Mortal Kombat hot takes. Okay, this first comment comes from Otto Octavius 9552. Mortal Kombat 12 ruined the franchise. Too many unnecessary changes. Characters being the same in name only, not calling it Mortal Kombat 12. I can definitely see how some fans feel this way, that Mortal Kombat 1 buried the franchise from Mortal Kombat. I don't think that's the case. However, I do partially agree with this comment. I do think the better decision would have been naming this game Mortal Kombat 12, because although they did rebrand it as an entirely new era, it really isn't. It still is a continuation off of Aftermath. And as far as agreeing further with this comment, I do think it was unnecessary to name swap some of the characters under the mantles, unless there really is a unique way they plan on changing this story. But so far, I haven't been impressed with the new timelines and the repeated scenarios that we've been getting, like Sub-Zero becoming Noob Saibot. In fact, it was Bihan that became Noob Saibot again. For me, lore-wise, I think it's had a rough start. I was really into the story of this game until the third act. Also, I do want to say that MK1 did bring in some new fans. However, I do think it pushed a lot of fans away. Mortal Kombat's had dips in the past, and it's recovered. This title didn't ruin the franchise. This next comment comes from Red Video Movie, the bottom level of the MK iceberg. Mortal Kombat has actually sucked since Mortal Kombat 3, maybe even since MK2. Now, reading a comment like this, is this guy really a Mortal Kombat fan? I do mean that genuinely. Maybe they are a die-hard fan of the very first Mortal Kombat game, and they're just really into it. But now that we have 12 canon titles and several spin-off games, if you're really only enjoying the very first game, which is honestly pretty limited in content, because I have seen genuine comments where people say that Mortal Kombat went downhill once the 3D era came, or once the NRS era came. There's definitely room for debate there, but when you say it's downhill after the first or second game, I really wanted to entertain this one had they stuck to their guns on MK2 being good, because I've seen a lot of people make that argument, but they seem hesitant on that one here. A lot of Mortal Kombat games are better than this one, but saying that the rest of the games went downhill after this one, I completely disagree with. Okay, Fana Pro 23 shares, Mortal Kombat 9's female designs were boring, under-detailed, and uninspired compared to the male designs, which looked absolutely peak and amazing. I don't use the words male glaze, but it felt like NRS was sexualizing the women too much for the sake of sex sells. Sonya literally had the worst design possible. Is this how a Special Forces soldier dresses like? Anyway, majority of the females were from Outworld, and in my opinion, none of these designs fit them except for Melina. But they go on to say Shiva, however. Anyway, it's just disappointing to see the female designs be very similar to one another, and all of them look like stripping workers. Mortal Kombat X really fixed their tournament designs for me. It gave them more uniqueness and personality while still keeping the hotness. I thought the personalities were fine in Mortal Kombat 9. For example, when Sonya's on the bridge and Johnny Cage goes to give her a hand. I think it works just enough in MK9 for Sonya's design. I really don't think it's that bad. I can see how the top half may look like it's a little over the top, but Mortal Kombat 9 is meant to be over the top. I'm not one to hyper focus on the designs unless they try to bring back classic designs. I do like them to stay true to the material. The classic female designs don't bother me. In fact, I think they can just make alt skins for them that are a little more covered so they can satisfy both crowds. It's definitely not mandatory for me to feel like I need to have these characters be in these classic outfits. Ed Boon said himself in the 90s that reality's boring, nobody wants to pay for reality. If every character were supposed to fit their role, they would dress more like Stryker. He's your average regular guy. Now look, I know some people like Stryker, but when I'm playing Mortal Kombat, I do look for something a little more different. I definitely see your point. I can't say I fully agree with it though. I do like to see the classic designs on these characters. Like recently they brought back the Deception Melina in MK1, and that was more faithful to the character's design, and I really appreciated that. Now if the design genuinely looked way too far from what the character could be identified as, then I'd be like, well, that doesn't make much sense. If Sonya was in a miniskirt with this outfit as well, then I'd be like, alright. but it wouldn't bug me enough to not want to play the game or actually make a complaint about it. Josh Allen 5125 says, my take, MK DLC fighters should cost less than guest characters since NRS doesn't have to pay additional licensing fees for them. That makes sense since you are making your own characters in-house. You don't have to deal with all the paperwork and paying all the other companies to get licensing for those characters. And while I do agree with you on this, just one thing to consider, we are talking about WB. And the next comment's from Bad Luck Johnny 1375. They said Kung Lao should have been champion over Raiden. I don't think I would have been as interested if it was this version of Kung Lao that became the champion of Mortal Kombat. When I heard we were getting Mortal Kombat 1 and seeing the end of Aftermath and Fire God Liu Kang visiting the Great Kung Lao, or what I think was the Great Kung Lao, I thought Mortal Kombat really was going to do like a full-on reset and we were going to see the rebirth of the Great Kung Lao with Liu Kang's guidance. I would have preferred this over Mortal Raiden being the champion of Mortal Kombat. Don't get me wrong, this is an enjoyable story. I really do enjoy Mortal Kombat 1. It does start to become a slippery slope when Titan Shang Tsung comes in. And then I just wasn't the biggest fan of Chaos Reigns, but had they went back and made Kung Lao the main protagonist, I actually would have really enjoyed that. Cardi Lover 999 shares, the ninja's design in the game is bad. They all look like bad cosplayers. They don't look menacing at all, unlike in other games. I think there's some good points to be made from this comment. This may surprise some of you, but for me, I'm not a big fan of all the designs for the male ninjas in Mortal Kombat 1. Especially Rain, I know they were trying something different. Some people think it was a Injustice 3 prototype for Aquaman. Actually, I would be fine with him being a mage, but again, it solely is just the design. It doesn't feel like Rain. I like the ninja looking Rain, and I like the Adenian Prince style Rain that is like an Armageddon or an X. 9 also doesn't look bad either. I actually like every version of Rain except for MK1. Now, speaking on the Lin Kuei ninjas, like Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Smoke, they all look very similar, just different color palettes. I think they look okay, they look tame. I do have to keep in mind this is Liu Kang's timeline and everybody is dialed down. However, to be fair with your comment, to compare these designs with other Mortal Kombat titles, say especially the 3D era, or even Mortal Kombat 9, or even Mortal Kombat X for that matter, those designs are very menacing looking. And I gotta tell you man, I agree with you there. I think those designs do look better than these ones. Some people will say that those designs were too edgy or too over the top, but I prefer Scorpion as a Hellfire Spectre. I think that looks really cool. I'm not too big on the hairstyles, although I got used to them. I will say that I think Sub-Zero's probably the best of the three as far as designs. I was really hoping for something better with Smoke's gas mask, at least in the custom ones. There's one that looks really good. But I don't think all of them were bad. Some of them were okay, some of them I didn't care for like Reigns, but let me speak on Ermac. I think Ermac is the best designed ninja in Mortal Kombat 1 as far as who the character is, and comparing them to their previous forms, I really didn't like Ermac's original design. When his face was revealed and he just kind of looked like an old mummified zombie, it really did make a difference by changing up his hood and adding the mask and giving him a more menacing voice. For one, I just really don't like King Jared as Ermac. I also prefer this Ermac more than the one from the 3D era where he's a very bright red and then just has the mummy wraps around his head. Now I'm just saying it one more time, I'm speaking of post-production Ermac, not the one that we thought we were getting and the one that we do see in the story ending. We also have to consider Noob Saibot as well as one of the ninjas. I think he looks okay. I actually like the design, but when I think of the previous Noob Saibot forms we've had throughout the years, I would say they're better. Which I'll say Chaos Reigns Noob Saibot and MK11 Noob Saibot are close contenders. It's not so much the glowing color for Noob Saibot that really bothers me in MK1, I'm just not so big on the Geras head wrap that he has going on. You can switch up that gear piece, in fact if you do that I think he ends up looking pretty cool. You can even put the MK9 gear piece on him and I think he looks awesome. That said, I think Noob Saibot's one of the better looking ninjas. I don't think they did a bad job with Reptile. Of course he could look more threatening, but I think that's what his other form is for. It's a design that I'm fine with. I do think there's better designs. I like the MKX design a lot. And look, I do understand there's a lot of people that don't like Dino Reptile, but I'm also a fan of Human Reptile as well too. Especially UMK3 Reptile. That's one of my favorite Reptile versions. Again, I'm just sharing my reaction and my take to your guys' opinions. I'm not saying you're wrong. Zesty Zateran shares, MK1 had a really good base story mode. I didn't even mind the Titan Shang Tsung stuff until it turned into every single MK11 ending is canon and every single character in the MK universe has their own universe they created. I just think people would have been less salty if the conflict stayed between the two timelines. I agree with that. I still think people would have been a little bummed seeing Titan Shang Tsung return like, ah, here we go again. Yeah, I do agree with this comment because it just kept getting a little more ridiculous, and then once there was Titans everywhere, that's when it really felt like, what is going on here? We had this really grounded story that was slowly developing. We were getting used to individual characters and how they interact with each other. Even in this form, yes, it's a little much that all the characters are duplicated like we're seeing here, but it was just a handful of them. Even if they all got duplicated once, at least they're only dealing with copies similar to MK11. It really did. It got blown out of proportion when the Temple of Argus became the focal point with all these different Titans from their own timelines coming out. Heck, I think they could have even brought back Chronica somehow, and I think people would have enjoyed that better than multiple Scorpions, multiple Reptiles, multiple Havocs, Reikos. When you add an overabundance of every character, your character infinitely feels safe. Different versions of that character can die, and you can just replace it with a new one. It eliminates the threat, which takes the fun out of it. And for the first time, I thought I was really going to enjoy canon endings, but they all play it very safe. And that's even with all these different Titans now. So yes, again, I'm a fan of the story up until the Titans get revealed because it takes away a lot. I don't think it's completely unbearable. I look at it as kind of like stupid fun, right? Whereas earlier on in the story, I felt like I was experiencing a movie and playing a part of it. It was a lot different than what we ended up getting as the end result. So yeah, I do agree with this comment here. If they would have kept it with two timelines similar to MK11, it could have been left at that. Two timelines instead of having multiple timelines. The less, the better. Angry Monkey 2489 says, I like the idea of having Scorpion and Sub-Zero being biological brothers. I do think that's a hot take. I think some people like that and some people don't. In this case, I wasn't as big of a fan of it because Kuai Liang and Bi-Han being biological brothers now means Scorpion and Noob Saibot are brothers. I really enjoyed this better when it was between the two Sub-Zeros of Bi-Han and Kuai Liang because they had the cryomancy in common, and I liked being able to really sense that Kuai Liang was the younger brother looking up to his older brother. So when Bi-Han becomes Noob Saibot, Kuai Liang picks up the Sub-Zero mantle to honor his brother. Whereas it's different in MK1 because Kuai Liang's Scorpion and Bi-Han are both brothers, but they're already both headstrong. So I don't know if the brothership is really going to be mended. I don't think it lasted long enough. Now, the idea of it, I think I would have been fine with. Had Sub-Zero not been turned into Noob Saibot so soon, or had they used someone else to become Noob Saibot. This is just a fun one for me to ask you because it really is split right down the middle. I had asked you guys, do you consider Mortal Kombat 4 an arcade era game or do you consider it a 3D era game? In the poll I said if you consider it both, then choose the one you think it's closest to, whether it's arcade or 3D. I can tell you this, I definitely see both sides of it because this is the beginning of the quote-unquote 3D era. This is the game being 3D and moving somewhat in 3D directions at times. At the same time, it did release on an arcade, so to see the votes really be split right down the middle, it's really cool and interesting to see. I really think it's interesting how one game can be perceived as something different from another person and by so many people. Depending on how well this video does, we'll see if we revisit this or not, so if you enjoy it, definitely leave a like and let me know what you think. Of course, I definitely want to know what your guys' opinions are. If you're new to the channel, leave a like and subscribe. That's all for this one, my friends. If you want to further support the channel, consider becoming a channel member. That will give you more access to additional content as well. You also get additional perks in the live streams, which I'm live most evenings. That's all for this one, everyone. Much love and take care.